Ladies and gentlemen, sit down, grab some snacks, and get ready to have your mind blown, because you're watching the ups and downs of Nicolas Cage.
Yes, thank you, hello, and welcome to the Ups and Downs of Nicolas Cage, where every week we take a look at the best and the worst that Nicolas Cage has to offer. As always, I'm your host, Logan Locke, and today is a Friday, which means we're looking at one of his lower-rated films. Today we're looking at 2019's A Score to Settle. A Score to Settle was released in 2019, directed by Shaw Koo, and written by John Stewart Newman. On a budget of an unknown amount, it made $84,878. The film follows Nicolas Cage, freshly released from a 19-year-long prison sentence, as he vows to hunt down and kill all of the gang members that put him there. Overall, I think the film is okay. Could have been better? Yes. I feel like the film is trying to be two different films, and that can be done in movies well. It can shift in the middle to add tension, add suspense, or to throw the audience off. But it has to be done well. And this movie doesn't fully commit to either movie that it's trying to do. In the first part, it's about a man released from prison trying to readjust everyday life and trying to reconnect with his son, who he hasn't seen in 19 years. That could be an interesting film. The other half is about a man who's hell-bent on killing every member of his gang that put him in jail for 19 years for a crime he didn't commit. That could also be an interesting movie. And there could be a really good balance between the two of them, where the first half transitions into the second half because of a tragedy, he gets beaten up or he gets rejected multiple times because of his past, and he's trying to break the stigma, but he never can because he's just unable to escape the label that being in prison has put on him. But it never fully commits. When it starts to get interesting in the reconciling with his son, he goes off and punches a dude for about 10 minutes, and it's just jarring. There's no transition between the two of them, and then it goes right back to him trying to become a better father to his son. And it's unfortunate because this movie could have been a really well-directed film about a man who is forced to go back to the life of crime because he has no other option because society has abandoned him. It could have been a commentary on the labeling of prisoners that we give and the inability to reform that they need. But instead it's just, hey, I'm with my son and now I'm going to kill some dudes. I will say, though, that Nicolas Cage's performance is incredible. He does a really great job with all of the stuff that he's been given. There are some points in the movie where you expect Nicolas Cage to become a bit more Nicolas Cage than usual, but instead he keeps it restrained, he keeps it controlled, and it works really well for the movie. There's a lot of moments where he genuinely acts like a person who is struggling with everything that's happened to him. And for the most part, the film is good. If you want a dumb action movie to put on, don't want to pay much attention to it, this one will work fine. But that's all I can say, really, without getting into the spoiler territory. So after an ad break, I'll move into that.
Interested in making your own podcast but not sure where to start? Anchor makes it easy. Anchor has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And best of all, it's free. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So the film starts off with Nicolas Cage being released from prison. We find out that he has a disease which is letting him leave prison early. We saw in a flashback that Nicolas Cage was part of a gang. They were all violent. They were beating up some guy for something we never found out. And once they kill that guy, we realize that Nicolas Cage took the blame for the murder so that the gangery could continue. When he gets out of prison, his son is waiting for him, wearing a very bad tank top hoodie that looks paper thin. I don't know how that looks comfortable, but he chooses to wear it for the entire film. And they're walking to a place where they can get some food, and they're talking a bit about how, Nicolas Cage hasn't seen him in 19 years. He wants to be a better father. He's trying to atone for his past sins. And for the most part, his son seems to be accepting that. He seems willing to, try and patch things up with his dad, trying to put the past in the past. I will say the son, Joey's acting is not great. He seems to have the same face for the entire time, where he's smiling, and it doesn't seem like he's really a part of the movie. And he doesn't fit in. When stuff happens, he doesn't react properly. Nicolas Cage goes to his old house with his son, and he digs up a duffel bag filled with money. We learn later on there's about 450,000 smackaroos in there, along with a bloody bat that was used to kill the guy in the beginning. Not sure why he kept it instead of getting rid of it, since it's evidence that proves that he didn't kill him and that his boss did kill the guy. And he goes to his son and is like, "Hey, I found this old baseball card that you used to always love. Man, isn't that a real thing that's happening?" And his son's like, "Oh yeah, man, I wonder how much I could sell it." And Nicolas Cage, of course, goes, "Hey, don't sell it. If you don't want it, I'll take it and give you some money. But please, don't sell it." And that's the whole philosophy behind their relationship, that the son really wants to move on. He wants to forget about the past and move on to the future. And Nicolas Cage wants to, make up for the 19 years of life that he's lost. And he decides that he's going to use the money to live it. He rents a big fancy hotel room. He buys a Lamborghini. He buys a suit for him and his son. He buys a phone for himself. He's spending. He's living it up. We find out that his son used to be a junkie and that he is now clean. That comes up again later in a way I did not expect. And Nicolas Cage goes to meet his old friend from the gang, who is known as Q. Nicolas Cage says, "Hey, I know it was Joseph the Dragon and the Tank that did the thing that I didn't like." They don't say specifically what it is, but you can get the gist that it was a betrayal on their part to Nicolas Cage, and that he's never forgotten about it even after all these years. And it's not the being blamed for the murder, because he chose to do that. That was the rule. And I think that's a good choice by the directors, to not even hint at what it could possibly be. There's a reason that it's not specifically told to us, but the fact that it wasn't even hinted at, I think, was a nice touch. Nicolas Cage finds out that everyone from the old gang has moved on. The leader of the gang, Mike, he had a stroke and then died about 6 years before Nicolas Cage was released. Jimmy the Dragon was, he escaped, and he's doing stuff with women that are not PG-13. And the Tank became a butcher, and he worked at a meat shop since he got arthritis. And Nicolas Cage goes to track them down, but that goes in contrast with his son, who he promised he wouldn't go after them. He would move on from the past. But Nicolas Cage can't escape it. That's his past that shaped his entire life. So he's obviously gonna, want to get some revenge. He grapples with Jack the Dragon for a bit, but he lets him go eventually and goes back to his son, who's obviously upset. There's also this subplot where Nicolas Cage hires a prostitute, and it's kind of dumb. It serves no purpose other than that's the first time Nicolas Cage has done anything in 19 years. She only comes up once or twice ever again in the movie, and the amount of time that they spend on developing her character and the backstory, you think that she's going to come up in some meaningful way, and she really doesn't. But overall, her entire character arc and inclusion is kind of a waste. Nicolas Cage eventually finds the Tank at the meat shop, and he's like, "Hey, I don't like you. I want to kill you." And the Tank is like, "Man, I understand." And then Nicolas Cage kills him, and that's the scene. A bit anticlimactic. He just sort of shoots him once. You think there'd want to be some sort of more aggravation involved in the attacks. And that was a complaint that I found online in other reviews that I found as well, is that there's not really as much action as you would expect from this kind of film. Apart from 2 or 3 minute chunks spliced in, like in the last 30 minutes, there's nothing really, heart racing or thrilling about it. It's just like an old dad beating up some other old guys. I don't mind that. I would watch that under different circumstances, but that's not what I signed up for when I watched this film. I wanted Nicolas Cage killing a lot of people, not killing a couple of people occasionally. Nicolas Cage goes with his son to a cemetery where Nicolas Cage's wife and the son's mother is buried. And then the big twist in the movie, and I got handed to the director, I did not see this coming at all. Sha Ku really pulled a fast one on me. I did not see the twist coming at all, where the son was dead the entire time. It pans over to the grave next to his wife, and we see his name, and I didn't connect the dots at first, and then because he's called his son Joey the whole time, but the gravestone is Joseph, and then he bends over and like, "Man, I really miss you, and I wish I could have done more to help you." And then it flashbacks and shows all the true scenes that Nicolas Cage didn't have dinner with his son. He didn't buy watches with his son. He just bought watches himself. And then we find out that the Tank and